It is John Pollock alongside John Ramdeen and Robin Black. UFC 206 has become the most chaotic card of the year with the people that have been added to the card, removed from the card, rumored for the card, stating they'll fight on the card but not at their regular weight class, but they'll be on the card if they're asked to. The latest addition, Kelvin Gastelum, who now is the dance partner of one Tim Kennedy, because he's able, with the New York State Athletic Commission, to take a 6-month suspension, and it's been reduced to a $2,000 fine.
What?
Like that.
But hold on. Like a month suspension and you pay me is not they're not the same penalty. Like that would be like, well, you have a 6-month suspension unless, you know.
A little scratch
here. You pony up a couple of grand and we'll let that thing go. This New York commission so far, thumbs down.
They don't know.
They're new.
Yeah.
They're new, which is fine. When you're new, if you ever get a brand new job or you come into a company in a new position or something, just go about learning. Go about analyzing what people have done, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and slowly and carefully change things.
So if he got a $2,000 fine, I assume Thiago Alves, who got a 3-month suspension,
$500.
That should be $1,000 by their math,
Sure.
that he should be allowed to fight. Now, a great point that was brought up was the fact that these two missed weight, and it would also be a necessary suspension that they shouldn't be making weight so quickly after having an awful weight cut. But that's not the case here, because Kelvin Gastelum is coming back a month later. He is fighting at a higher weight class. I don't know how I feel about this. It's like you either, as a commission, have teeth or you don't. You're either going to give the suspension or not. And if it's just simply a $2,000 fine, then why don't we just start that out from the get-go, if that was the out for Kelvin Gastelum?
Well, this is a way to extort $2,000 out of Kelvin Gastelum.
Weird.
Yeah.
Now Kelvin Gastelum, he can get that $2,000 back if he just wrecks Tim Kennedy.
Yeah.
Well,
Which you would like to see.
Hey,
I don't know why he doesn't like Tim Kennedy.
Well,
Seems like a good guy.
As you look at Kelvin Gastelum and just all that he has gone through in this month, and fighting at middleweight, I mean, we saw him have to do this middleweight penalty before, look very good against Nate Marquardt. This time around, he is, to your chagrin, taking on, I think, a very tough middleweight in Tim Kennedy, and therefore, I don't know what we can expect from Kelvin Gastelum, where he's coming up in weight, he has gone through all of this drama, and he has 2 weeks to prepare for Tim Kennedy. Less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, and the drama is not something that people should overstate or underestimate because it's real. You have just been embarrassed. You've just been, penalized. You've just had this dream. He wants to be the 170-pound world champion. He's young and talented and driven, and he has the
We've
ability
seen this
to
guy
do
excel at
it.
170.
Yeah, and so you're on a path. His hashtag on his Twitter is on a quest for gold. That's his hashtag. That's his thinking. And on that path, screws up. Doesn't make weight. Now, the turn of events is he gets publicly embarrassed, he gets fined, he gets suspended, now he's fined, now he's moving, now he's 185, this is Tim Kennedy. That's a lot. If he's mentally strong and if he's hyper-focused and if he uses this all for good, not to frighten him forward or not to overdrive him, but uses it to focus, relax, and calm, he can have a stellar performance. That's what we'd love to see. There's something about him. You want to cheer for this kid.
I just imagine if you're getting ready for Donald Cerrone, you're going to be good. You know exactly what's coming. You're in for probably the 3 worst rounds of your entire life. So if he was getting ready for Donald Cerrone, I think he'll be fine in this fight with Tim Kennedy.
Cerrone is a lightweight, and Kennedy's a middleweight.
And
that big difference is real, too. But you can make that to your advantage if you use it properly.
I watched what Donald Cerrone did to middleweight title challenger Patrick Cote.
It's true. But the size and the weight and the wrestling are elements, but you can't fear them. You got to move towards them. And Gastelum's got to go out and just show what he's capable of, because you really do want this guy. You want to cheer for him. There's just something about him. You can sense it in him that he wants to be a world champion. And this is the type of hiccup that if you can pass this test and move forward, it can be a really important turning point in his life.
Now, the card looks to be locked at this point. We can look at the card now and seem to know what we're going to be getting at the Air Canada Centre. I guess the one variable that I am not expecting to pan out is Anthony Johnson, who had stated he's not taking a fight at 205 pounds. It doesn't make any sense. I agree with him. But when he spoke to Fox Sports, said if a heavyweight option were there, that would be something he would entertain on short notice. I don't think this is going to happen. I think that it's just that they have this card in place, and I think for Anthony Johnson, it'd be nice that this guy gets paid. I mean, through no fault of his own, this fight fell apart. But the option is out there. My question is, if this guy were to fight at heavyweight and lose, would that be a strike against him at light heavyweight?
So it's heavyweight. He's taking the fight. He's an entertainer. You're telling me if it was Anthony Johnson versus Roy Nelson, people wouldn't be happy that they're going to see an action fight. We all know how that fight would probably play out, but Roy Nelson, that guy can take a ridiculous amount of punishment, and he can lay you out if you're not on your A game. So there's, I'm sure, a number of fights that would be interesting for Anthony Rumble Johnson at heavyweight.
But I think Anthony Johnson will be fighting Daniel Cormier in the spring, but this other Anthony, this pretty talented Anthony Pettis is fighting, and that we're excited about. This is a tough fight for him. He's never looked better just from a heart and drive and desire to win standpoint, and then in his last fight against Oliveira. He's always had the skills, but not always had the intensity, and now that last performance was the one. But he's fighting one of the best talented youngsters in the world in Max Holloway. That fight is stellar. That's a stellar main event.
Is it important that Anthony Pettis plays the entire game? Because I think when we expect a specific game plan or style from Anthony Pettis, it's primarily a stand-up game. But we know he is the complete guy that will go in for takedowns. If he's taken down, he's not just a guy that will try to stand up. He'll try to submit you. What do you expect the strategy would be when he's facing a guy that is as good as Max Holloway is, and he seems to be that next level of fighter?
You've met Anthony, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got this swagger to him. He's got this confidence to him. He wants to go in and mess this kid up on the feet for sure. His belief is that there's nobody at 145 or 155 pounds that he can't outstrike. I think it'll be Holloway who will try to incorporate all these other elements to the game. But that swagger, that shiny shirt and gold chain Anthony Pettis will meander right across the cage and get in a fist fight with this kid.
How quickly do you think that changes? Because I'm sure Cub Swanson thought the same thing with, like, who is this Max guy that I'm facing? Oh my God, I better do something because I'm going to lose this fight.
That he may get to that point and go, oh yeah, right. This kid is an A and I'm an A++. I think that's what he's expecting, and I think that's very possible. Max Holloway is a mind-blowing young fighter, but he ain't never faced a guy like Anthony Pettis, who's a pretty big 145er. It's a great fight. It's a stellar fight, and it's really hard to pick.
That is the new main event after Daniel Cormier suffered a torn abductor muscle. They will be fighting for the interim featherweight title to headline UFC 206 in Toronto.